Hello and welcome back to reaDIYsteaDIY. So as you know, Valentine's Day is coming, and while I have my girlfriend's gift all sorted out, I'd like to get something for her dogs too. In fact, I think I'd like to make something for them. So her dogs are a Husky Greyhound mix, and that means they're kind of an amazing blend of speed and strength. Strangely, at the dog park, most people who see them assume that they're boys, when they're really girls. It really bothers my girlfriend. She has often wondered if she had pink collars for the girls, maybe people would stop making this mistake. I don't know if it'll work, but I know I can make a pink collar for them, so I'm gonna try. I've never made a dog collar before, but I'm pretty good with my sewing machine and I've sewed webbing before. So I knew what supplier to look to for the parts, and this is everything I assembled. Basically, a dog collar is comprised of some webbing, a D-ring, a latch, and a slide. Webbing comes in a variety of material. You can get cotton webbing, you can get polypropylene webbing, you can get nylon webbing. I chose nylon webbing. I chose this pink nylon webbing, mostly because it's fabulous. But also because it has a bonded silver reflective strip right down the middle. So when my girlfriend's out running with her dogs and it's still dark, they'll be visible. That's good. This particular webbing has a 1,400-pound break strength and it's heat and UV stabilized. Seems good to me. Next up, there's a D-ring. You can get D-rings in a 1-inch size, but I noticed they had this slightly larger 1 1/8 inch size. That allows the webbing to slide through with a little bit of room to spare. Just to see if I could minimize the fraying that often happens where the D-ring curve meets the edge of the webbing. And finally, I chose a web slide for adjustability. This doesn't take a whole ton of force or weight, but I made sure to get one with rounded edges so that when it slid up and down the webbing, it wouldn't fray it. And if it did come in contact with the dog's necks, it would be comfortable. Finally, the buckle. The buckle's a pretty important part of any collar. You want to make sure it won't fail, but you also want to make sure that you get a contoured buckle because a flat buckle pushing up against the neck of a dog is going to be uncomfortable. I chose this heavy-duty contour single side release buckle. It's made of black acetal. That kind of plastic is pretty good because it's self-lubricating. They're a little more long-lasting. They're a little more weather-resistant. The moving parts won't stick or grind each other down. The feel of the buckle is really strong. When it clicks together, it's pretty loud. That gives me confidence that the dogs will be safe while wearing these collars. So lastly, you need a sewing machine and you need some thread. It's just a straight locking stitch that's required. I used to have an old thrift store sewing machine. With the right needle, that sewing machine could sew through 2 layers of webbing no problem. If I were using that kind of machine, I would be limited to a number 69 thread, nothing thicker. With the machine that I'm using now, I can go higher, and I might have chosen a 92 thread. Either one would work for this project. Then generally when sewing webbing, you're choosing between a nylon thread or a polyester thread. Nylon is better for indoors. It's often used for upholstery because it has an elasticity to it. Polyester is better for outdoor stuff like awnings or tents, stuff that's going to be out under UV rays for prolonged periods of time. Both would probably work. I had some number 69 nylon thread, and since the collar was made of nylon, I decided to go with that. The white color looks nice against the pink, and I know it's going to be strong enough. If your sewing machine has trouble sewing multiple layers of webbing, one good trick is just to not use the pedal at all. Turn the wheel with your hand. Webbing that's only 1 inch wide, you're only going to put in 8, 10, 12 stitches at most. You can do that by hand. And that often makes it a lot easier. So in order to make a dog collar, you can't really do it without getting to know the box X stitch. The box X stitch is a very strong stitch. It's used for securing all kinds of things. You'll find it's a stitch that holds together your ratchet straps, your tool bags, all kinds of things. Basically, it's a box with an X in the middle and 2 extra lines at the top and bottom. It's strong because you've got stitches that are horizontal, vertical, and diagonal. It looks really complicated, but actually it's not. It's sort of like a little drawing puzzle. You can do it all in one go. Basically, you go across the webbing in one direction, up one side 1 stitch, back across the webbing in the other direction, then a diagonal, then across, the opposite diagonal, then you go up one side, just past the horizontal line, make a second horizontal line at the top, and then back down to where you started. Make sure to back tack at the beginning and the end, and you can make your box X stitch with 1 line of stitching. That's basically all the stitching you're going to do on the dog collar, so it's good to practice. Once you get it, you can do all kinds of webbing work. It's a good idea to practice on a piece of paper and draw it like I did here. Get used to the pattern. It can get a little frustrating if you go the wrong way while making your box X stitch with your sewing machine. So I took a look at the girls' old collars, and with some measuring, I determined that I was going to need about 33 inches of material. So I measured out 33 inches of the webbing, I cut it with some scissors, and then before I went any further, I had to burn the ends. Nylon webbing is basically made of plastic. If you don't singe the ends and bond them to each other, they're going to fray over time, and that's not good. It's unsightly and it makes the webbing weaker. So I took the webbing outside, grabbed my barbecue lighter, and gently singed the ends. It's a good idea to do this outside. First of all, you're burning plastic. You want to have good ventilation. And second of all, if a glob of nylon falls on the ground, burning glob of nylon. You don't want that falling on your carpet. So now I've got my proper length of webbing and the ends are singed. I'm ready to start applying the accessories. First up is the slide. Basically, you take one end of the webbing, you slide it up through the slide, and then back down through the other end of the slide, leaving 2.5 inches of overlap. Then you secure the webbing to the slide by doing your box X stitch. When you do the box X stitch, you want to make sure to come as close to the buckle as you can, pinching it in tightly. That way the buckle doesn't have any play and can't wear away at the webbing from within. So now the webbing slide's attached, we can add the male part of the buckle. You take the end of the webbing that does not have the slide on it and you pass it through the male end of the buckle, and then you feed it back to the slide and run that through the slide a second time. Now you have a level of adjustability and you're ready to attach the other two accessories. The two remaining accessories consist of the D-ring and the female part of the buckle. You don't want to put these on in the wrong order. You want to slide the D-ring on, then put on the female part of the buckle. The D-ring's not going to be able to fit over the female part of the buckle. If you sew the female part of the buckle on first, you're going to not be able to put on the D-ring after, and you'll have to take the female part of the buckle off, then slide the D-ring on, and then reattach the female part of the buckle. I recommend having a stitch picker handy, just in case you need to take apart your stitching if you make a mistake, especially if this is your first time sewing webbing. You'll probably make a mistake, but this is one you don't have to make. Just slide the D-ring on first, and then work on the female part of the buckle. Basically, you slide the one remaining end of the webbing up and back through the buckle, and this time we'll leave a little bit more overlap because we have to do 2 box X stitches on this side, maybe something like 4 inches. I do the box X stitch as close to the female part of the buckle as I can get, and that secures it into place. I reach down and pull the D-ring back to where it will sit on the collar, pinch it into place, sew another box X stitch to secure it where it needs to be. So now I have a fully assembled working collar. When I pull on it, it feels really strong in all directions. The latch isn't moving, the D-ring is on solidly. Now I want to test it. I've read that the average husky can pull about 90 pounds of weight. Obviously the force on the D-ring would probably be more than 90 pounds for a split second if the dog lunges or dives in a certain direction. But I thought I could test it by just applying about 90 pounds worth of dumbbell, attaching it to the D-ring, and seeing what happens. This collar seems to hold up. Even when I jerk it around, the 90 pounds of weight just doesn't seem to phase it. The stitching's holding, the D-ring's holding, the webbing is holding. I'm pretty confident we can put this on the dogs. It's really meant to be just a cosmetic collar. When we go out to the dog park or when we go out for runs, the dogs are always on heavy-duty harnesses, so we probably won't be trusting our dog's safety to it, but it's good to know if we have to, we can. Plus, they look amazing. The girls are gonna be so pretty. I hope they have a good Valentine's Day. Anyway, I hope there was some value in that for you. If there was, please feel free to like or subscribe. I'm really just getting the channel started, and it really does help when you like or subscribe. But even if you don't, please feel free to leave a comment. Comments help me make the channel better, and that's what I'm after.